After 5 years of paralysis, a poor farmer's unexpected whisper revealed a transformative miracle. Jack sat on the porch of his family's modest homestead, a wooden chair that felt more like a prison. The weight of his paralysis pressed down, sapping vitality from the vibrant dreams he once harbored. 5 years had passed since the accident, and with each dawn that painted the rolling hills, Jack felt more disconnected from the land that had been his lifeblood. His hands, now idle, had once nurtured crops and coaxed life from the stubborn ground. Now they rested limply on the wheelchair's armrests as shadows crept into his mind. Mornings used to mean excitement, he thought bitterly, remembering the rush of planting season, the scent of fresh earth awakening under the warmth of the sun. Now they're just silent reminders of what's lost. The farm lay vulnerable and neglected, and with each ticking second, foreclosure felt more like a grim guarantee than a distant fear. Emily tried hard to maintain a semblance of normalcy for their two young children, Tommy and Lily, her laughter a thin veil draped over unspoken anguish. But Jack could see through the act, the concern etched deeply into her features, a haunting reflection of his own despair. Maybe it's time to let it go, a voice in his head whispered. The uncertainty clawed at him, and Jack's heart raced with dread at the suggestion. This was his father's life work, his own childhood among these fields. Giving up felt like slicing away part of his very identity. The thought tugged at his resolve, unraveling him further. Just then, a soft noise pulled him away from his spiral. Mr. Thompson, the elderly neighbor with a worn face that etched wisdom, ambled over to the porch. Jack welcomed the distraction, though it felt like grasping at smoke. "You still spending time in your garden, Jack?" the old man asked, the question echoing in the emptiness. Jack nodded, feeling tears prick at his eyes. The patch of flowers and vegetables thrived alongside his sorrow, a small oasis in a barren desert of despair. "Let me tell you about soil health," Mr. Thompson said, leaning closer, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Understanding nutrients, composting, it could change everything for your crops." The passion in his voice stirred something dormant within Jack, a flicker of something he thought extinguished, hope. It danced timidly but boldly in front of him. Could analyzing soil be his salvation? Would that bring him closer to the rhythm of life his heart craved? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The path seemed brighter as he immersed himself in the world of sustainable farming techniques. With every new insight, Jack felt himself rekindled, a renewed passion guiding his days. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a gnawing doubt. This diversion from mundanity felt precarious. What if he failed? The financial strain on the farm hung thick in the air, the day of reckoning ever closer. An unexpected email arrived, extending an invitation to present at a local conference. It was a lifeline, but also a weighted choice. Jack trembled at the thought of standing before a community that had witnessed his fall. Would they see him as a voice of resurgence or merely a husk of lost potential? As Jack prepared his presentation, his confidence wavered. Doubt and desire clashed violently within, each path a treacherous tightrope suspended over uncertainty. He could reclaim the joys of his past or reveal a rawness he feared would shatter his family. The day loomed ahead, fraught with the gravity of his choice. All that he held leaned into that moment. How would he reshape the whispers of his past? Would he dare risk his heart to protect his legacy? Or would fear tether him to the shadows he desperately wanted to escape? The stage awaited, and so did the truth that could define his existence. The morning of the conference arrived, shrouded in a thick mist that mirrored Jack's swirling thoughts. Sitting in front of the mirror, he adjusted the collar of his only shirt, a relic from brighter days before tragedy struck. His reflection revealed a face lined not only with the burdens of paralysis, but with the weight of expectations, his own and those of others. As he brushed his fingers against the smooth fabric, the sensation felt foreign against his skin, a sharp reminder of all that he longed to reclaim. His heart raced as he rehearsed his speech in the refuge of their kitchen. The sunlight filtering through the window did little to warm his growing anxiety, casting harsh shadows across the table where a pile of notes lay untested. This is not just a presentation, he reminded himself sternly. It's a chance to show what I've learned, to prove that I can still contribute. Yet each time he uttered the words aloud, the echo rang hollow, as if he were merely whispering to the ghosts of lost aspirations. Emily's gentle voice broke through the veil of worry. "Jack, you're going to do great," she said, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "Just remember, you're not the man you were before. You're stronger than that." Her reassurance offered a sliver of solace, but Jack could not shake the haunting voices of doubt that insisted he was a mere shadow of his former self. As the time for departure approached, Jack's palms grew clammy. He needed to confront the reality of who he had and the fears that had shackled him in the past years. Today was the day he would either tumultuously rise or collapse under the weight of vulnerability. This was more than an opportunity to share agricultural insights. It was the precipice of a personal renaissance or further descent into despair. As he wheeled his way to the venue, each bump in the road jostled his inner turmoil. He longed for the camaraderie of fellow farmers, but faced the prospect with a sense of foreboding. Would they laugh behind his back or offer their support? Pulling into the parking lot, he noted how the familiar faces of his contemporaries gathered in clusters, each conversation filled with energy and purpose. Their animated movements stirred an old hunger in him, a yearning to belong once more. Could he reclaim that belonging despite the chasm his paralysis had carved between him and his community? When he entered the auditorium, the chatter shifted to hushed whispers, gazes falling upon him like heavy weights. Jack swallowed hard. The moment of truth had arrived. Standing before the podium, the room shifted again into a tense silence, eyes unwaveringly fixed on him. What if they only see a failure? Echoed a shadow in his mind. But he steadied himself. He had a message. With that thought, emboldened by Mr. Thompson's teachings, he opened his notes, clearing his throat as he prepared to speak. Today, I want to discuss the transformative power of soil health. But first, I need to share my journey. The words poured forth, tinged with raw emotion and fury, each syllable a challenge to the insecurities that had long held him captive. As he spoke, a realization arose. Perhaps this was the moment of transformation, not solely for his farming, but for himself. The more he shared, the more he felt the shackles of self-doubt fracturing. The crowd leaned in, captivated not just by his knowledge, but by his resolve. A man who had not succumbed, who was determined to rise again. As he finished, applause erupted, but Jack's heart raced with something more profound. Relief washed over him, yet anxiety coiled tightly in his chest. Amid the clapping and murmurs of approval, he sensed deeper truths emerging. Would this newfound connection empower him to confront the reality waiting at home, or would it spark a greater fear of having something so precious to lose? The standing ovation faded into a reverberating silence within, leaving him suspended between triumph and vulnerability. He had tapped into a wellspring of courage, yet the battle was far from over. What awaited him at the end of this journey? As questions swirled in his mind, a chance encounter with a longtime rival loomed on the horizon, one who held the key to a pivotal decision that could either solidify Jack's progress or threaten the fragile transformation he had begun. The time had come to face not only the world, but also the demons lurking just out of sight. As the applause faded, Jack's mind buzzed with a chaotic blend of exhilaration and apprehension. The feeling of connection he'd experienced swirled within him, but shadows of doubt quickly followed. Would the applause translate into lasting acceptance, or would whispers of his past return to haunt him? He carefully navigated his way through the crowd, feeling the weight of eyes upon him. Some were filled with admiration, but others bore the unmistakable mark of skepticism. Jack's heart thudded painfully. He had faced these people before. Many of them were familiar, but had become distant during his years in isolation. He needed to confront them now and prove he was not merely a remnant of what he had been. As he approached a small group, his childhood friend Dan stepped forward, a hesitant smile breaking through his composed demeanor. Jack noticed how Dan shifted his weight slightly, as if caught between nostalgia and the uncomfortable present. For an instant, Jack's old insecurities flared up, a fear they would see him only as broken. But a flicker of determination ignited within him as he stepped closer, extending his hand toward Dan. "Hey, it's good to see you, Jack," Dan spoke, his voice steady but with underlying uncertainty. In that moment, Jack sensed a shift within himself. The warmth in Dan's voice was an invitation, not a judgment. "It's good to be seen," Jack replied, a hint of a smile curling his lips. He felt the softness of connection, which overshadowed the harshness of his doubts. As the group began to engage him in conversation about the future of farming techniques and sustainable practices, he found himself more animated than he had dared expect. Every question they posed felt like the hammer against a wall of self-doubt that he was determined to dismantle. With each response, he reclaimed a fragment of power he feared had been lost forever. Jack realized that he did have a voice, one that mattered, not just in agriculture, but in bridging the gap that had festered during his years away. However, just as he started to feel comfortable, he caught sight of someone at the edge of the crowd, Tom, a longtime rival who had never missed an opportunity to undermine Jack in the past. Anger rushed through him. What would Tom think? Would he scoff at Jack's vulnerability or recognize his growth? "Jack," Tom called out, his tone laced with a performance of congeniality. The crowd parted as he approached, forcing Jack to confront the man who represented all his insecurities and fears. "Impressive speech back there," Tom said, an artifice of sincerity playing on his features. "But you do realize this industry can be merciless, especially for someone, well, like you." With every syllable, Tom's words dripped with condescension, but Jack felt a surge of unexpected clarity. "Like me," he echoed, his tone calm yet firm. "You mean someone who climbed through adversity when others wrote him off? That's why I'm here, Tom, not to fit into your narrow view of ability, but to reshape it." The moment hung in the air, electrifying and intense. He could feel the interest of the people surrounding them crystallizing into a collective tension, awaiting either a breakdown or breakthrough. Jack realized this encounter was an opportunity to wield his vulnerability as strength. "Every setback has paved a way for growth, Tom. Do you ever contemplate what truly defines success?" Jack continued, intent on reframing the narrative. What if he could challenge not only Tom, but also his own understanding of defeat? For the first time, he saw acknowledgement flicker in Tom's eyes, and it unnerved him. What Jack had once feared, the vulnerability of facing a rival, now appeared to be a platform for deeper understanding. The old Jack, who would have backed down, was dissolving with every word of empowerment he spoke. There was something about being seen, both as a man and a farmer, that began to redefine him. As the crowd leaned in, curious, the confrontation between Jack and Tom became a microcosm of his larger battle against the remnants of his past identity. Jack could sense that victory loomed heavy on the brink, but there was a price. Would this confrontation be the catalyst for his deepening transformation? Or would the clash with Tom expose raw wounds that threatened his progress? The question lingered. What would truly take to carry this moment of resilience forward? Only time would tell, but not before Jack faced the real demons that awaited him. Jack could feel the air around him grow heavier as Tom regarded him, a mixture of surprise and curiosity flickering in his eyes. This was not how their meetings usually went. In the past, he would have let Tom's taunts pull him down, but now he stood rooted, defiant. Each heartbeat echoed a promise of clarity. He wasn't just here to confront his rival. He was here to recalibrate the lens through which he viewed himself. "What are you hoping for, Tom?" Jack asked, deliberately lowering his voice, allowing the moment to linger. "Are you looking for validation in my struggle, or do you secretly respect the journey?" This was new territory for Jack, an invitation for Tom to introspect, and he sensed that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a duel at all, but an opportunity for dialogue. Tom shifted uncomfortably, his facade cracking ever so slightly. Instead of launching a counterattack, he hesitated, his eyes narrowing as if weighing his words. Jack fought the urge to smile. Doubt crept into Tom's expression, and for the first time, Jack felt a flicker of power that came from understanding the precarious balance of vulnerability and strength. As the crowd observed the exchange, Jack's senses heightened. They were not just onlookers, they were witnesses to his evolution. He could feel their anticipation, a communal breath held tight in the air, and he realized the gravity of this moment transcended his rivalry with Tom. Here, he was redefining what it meant to be strong to those who once dismissed him.
"Success, Jack? You think I haven't respected your work?" Tom finally responded, his tone caught somewhere between defensiveness and genuine inquiry. "I just think you've ignored the realities of our field. Weakness doesn't exist in this industry. It will consume you." Jack narrowed his eyes, but focused on the space within him where fear once thrived. "Maybe that's why. I'm not here to survive, but to thrive. My worth isn't measured by milk prices or crop yields alone. It's what I learn from failure, the resilience I build while standing up again." With each word, he felt the armor he had worn against this very man begin to dissolve. This was not just an exchange of aggression. It felt transformative. For the first time, he recognized that he could shift the narrative, not only around his identity, but around the industry itself. The conversations around them stilled, the air crackling with a new urgency. He could hear someone whisper, "Did you hear that? He's confronting him." Experts and friends alike were unexpectedly engaged by this unexpected pivot, the rivalries seemingly transmuting into a moment of collective reflection. "Let's see how strong you are when things get tough next season," Tom said, though his voice sounded distant and less assured. Jack chose to see this not as a threat, but an opportunity to forge a new path. "Let's," Jack replied, exhibiting a wry smile. "But remember, every test turns into a lesson. I'll embrace the future, not just for myself, but for everyone." The finality of his words echoed in the space around him, and he could feel his heart racing, not out of fear, but exhilaration. With Tom now at a distance, seeking the comfort of the crowd, Jack turned back to Dan and the others. They looked back at him, not with pity, but admiration. Was it possible he was ready to leave behind not just Tom, but everything that had kept him from truly engaging in this world? "Now that's the kind of attitude we need in this industry," Dan said, raising a brow in approval. Jack felt a swell of purpose, a transformative realization stirring inside him. He wasn't merely present, he was meant to lead. But within him thrummed a tightly wound tension. He had started to redefine his identity, yet how would he manage the brewing conflicts within the industry? With Tom's words still echoing in his mind, Jack confronted a deeper question. Was there more to conquer than just his past? He looked around at the faces before him, a mix of support and lingering skepticism, and suddenly felt the weight of expectations settle heavily. If there were challenges ahead, navigating them seemed to demand not just strength, but clarity of vision and purpose. What lay ahead threatened to unravel all he had just consolidated. Would he trust himself enough to channel this poised vulnerability into action? Would the next conversation deepen his roots further into acceptance, or unearth the very fractures he had begun to mend? Uncertainty loomed large. Urgency crackled in the air like a storm waiting to burst, and Jack understood that a shift was imminent. He wasn't merely stepping forward, he was stepping into the unknown. The moment lingered, each second stretching out as Jack absorbed the weight of the crowd's scrutiny. Their expectations clung to him like shadows, pushing him to maintain his newfound resolve. Yet, beneath the surface, a maelstrom of thoughts churned. Could he sustain this momentum? Was he truly equipped to navigate the complexities that lay ahead in the unforgiving world of agriculture, a world so often defined by competition and unyielding standards? Feeling Dan's approving gaze, Jack turned to him, seeking an ally in this uncertain space. "What now?" he asked, the simple question carrying the heft of myriad uncertainties. Dan's expression shifted, lightening the tense atmosphere. "We build from here. You've just reshaped how they see you." Skepticism still loomed heavily over Jack's thoughts. "I'm still vulnerable. Any misstep and they'll be back to the old narratives. What if Tom is right about the industry consuming me?" Dan leaned in, sincerity etched in his features. "Think of it as a different kind of strength, Jack. The world needs visionaries who learn from failures, not just from triumphs. You're not merely a product of this industry, you're shaping it." There it was again, the audacious call to lead rather than follow. It ignited determination within him, but a flicker of doubt remained. What did it mean to lead in an arena where tradition often suffocated innovation? Could he truly be the catalyst for change while remaining authentic, without losing his hard-earned grounding? In that moment of reflection, he grasped the paradox of leadership. It required both boldness and humility, a willingness to embrace discomfort while inviting others to do the same. He had begun this journey to redefine not just himself, but also others' expectations. Yet the stakes felt exponentially higher now that he carried the potential to influence a community. Without fully comprehending the impulse, Jack stepped toward the group, the sea of industry faces transforming into an audience seeking guidance rather than judgment. "We've all faced setbacks," he began, his voice steadying as he looked into their eyes. "What if we shared those stories? What if our failures became as important as our successes?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, curiosity mingling with disbelief. The concept of vulnerability in a sector driven by hard metrics felt revolutionary. Yet Jack knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Each word he spoke felt like a high-stakes gamble. "But what if," he continued, heart pounding in rhythm with hope, "we start redefining what success looks like? If we learn to confront our fears together, we not only improve ourselves, but elevate the entire industry." He glanced around, capturing a fleeting moment of astonishment from some, a flicker of recognition in others. Suddenly he realized that he might not be facing Tom alone. There might be others yearning for the same revolutionary dialogue he had ignited. But even as that realization blossomed, new challenges loomed. Tom's looming presence stirred up a cautionary voice in the back of his mind. Was he ready to face not only Tom's criticism, but also the doubts lurking within his peers? And what would it mean to push for change in an industry so rigidly steeped in tradition? In the criminal thrill of budding hope, a chilling thought surfaced. Change wouldn't occur without backlash. Jack understood he was not only at a crossroads personally, but also at a pivotal moment in his career. An urgent question of identity loomed large. Was he a farmer or a change maker?
As he stood on the edge of this transformative precipice, he felt an unsettling duality within him, an invigorating energy tempered by the realities of the industry's resistance. The path forward was not paved. It would require navigating obstacles both seen and unseen, confronting concurrent conflicts within himself and with those unwilling to embrace change. Would he gather the strength to persist in this unsettling journey? Would others join him in facing the very foundation that held them captive? The direction of his narrative was shifting rapidly, and Jack was aware that embracing this evolution might lead him to unwelcome revelations. He turned back to seek Dan's eye, craving unspoken support even before the next conversation took place. Jack knew one truth. The moment had come to confront not only external opposition, but the internal battles that beckoned him forward into this new chapter of possibility. Could he endure the turbulence of transformation, or would he falter amid the waves of doubt? Jack felt the ground shift beneath him, his heart racing as anticipation mingled with anxiety. He had ignited a spark, but he was conscious of how easily it could fizzle out under the glare of scrutiny. The crowd's reaction had been one of intrigue, yet he sensed a tension simmering beneath their curiosity, a latent skepticism that could morph into resistance at any moment. He stepped back slightly from the group, needing a moment to process the myriad of emotions coursing through him. The weight of expectation felt heavier than before, tangled now with the responsibility he had willingly taken on. What could he truly offer? The question circled relentlessly. Did he have the authority to redefine success? Did he truly believe that sharing vulnerability could foster a culture of growth? Jack could feel Dan's reassuring presence nearby, a solid anchor amid the tumult. But what Jack needed now was more than assurance. He craved clarity. What if they reject this idea? What if this moment only strengthens the traditional grip? The doubts thudded like a persistent drumbeat in his mind. Dan approached. You can't control the reactions of others, Jack. What you can do is be the example. Show them the potential in embracing vulnerability. You might discover a strength in yourself that you didn't know existed. That concept gnawed at Jack. Who was he without the familiar touchstones of certainty? Leading meant risking not only his reputation, but potentially his community. Yet, with Dan's encouragement, he recognized that resistance was fertile ground for growth. Feeling a surge of determination, he returned to the group. Let's make this real, he declared, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. I believe we can start here, right now. Let's create a space where we feel safe to share our journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly. A ripple of surprise washed over the faces in front of him, yet he saw a hint of intrigue sparkle in some eyes. This was the moment he needed to seize, transforming their initial skepticism into engagement. Let's initiate an exchange. Share one failure you faced in this industry. Together, we'll take a step to redefine our collective narrative. Jack felt the weight of his proposal sink in, and for a heartbeat, silence enveloped the crowd. His pulse raced, driven by the possibility of connection. But with hope came the understanding that he was walking a tightrope. Whether they embraced it or rejected it, he was committed to pursuing this path. After what felt like an eternity, an older woman stepped forward hesitantly, her voice quivering but insistent. I lost everything last harvest due to a blight. It felt like I had let down my family, my farm. Her vulnerability unraveled a thread of tension, and slowly more voices emerged, sharing personal stories woven with trials and heartbreak. With each story shared, Jack felt his resolve crystallizing. They were venturing into uncharted territory, yet within that uncertainty lay untapped potential. He realized that connecting over failures could cultivate a shared resilience, a communal strength forged through transparency. Their discourse blurred the lines between teacher and student, a powerful collective of equals striving for evolution. Yet, as the conversations began flowing freely, so did Jack's own doubts. What would happen when they faced legitimate challenges together? Each revelation stirred a fresh wave of anxiety. Was his voice enough to guide them through inevitable setbacks? What would be the reaction when the harsh realities of the industry crept back into their lives? Amid the rich tapestry of shared experiences, Jack sensed Tom's looming presence, a specter of doubt waiting to capitalize on any perceived weakness. The notion became a burden. How could he lead if he was contending with outside opposition as well as internal conflict? The dialogue continued, but Jack found himself pulled between the hope blossoming in the room and the stark reality of their circumstances. The question danced on the edges of his mind like an unsated itch. What if he couldn't deliver on this promise? How would he handle backlash when it came? In that moment, he realized the journey ahead was less about finding immediate solutions and more about courageously stepping into the unknown and embracing the discomfort of growth. And so he forged a plan, a tentative outline of how they could transform these discussions into actionable strategies. Yet just as the crowd began to swell with newfound excitement, a chilling message broke through the atmosphere. Tom's voice cut in sharply over the improvisational spirit. "What you're proposing is dangerous, Jack. You're playing with fire, and the consequences may burn us all." Jack turned towards Tom, feeling the pulse of each heartbeat echoing in his ears. Was the budding hope he had created about to be extinguished? The tension in the air thickened, and he knew he was at a pivotal moment. Would he rise to confront the naysayer, his longtime rival, or would he find another way to navigate this treacherous terrain? With his experience in the area and the weight of the crowd's gaze upon him, Jack felt compelled to respond. The time has come to face that fire head on. Jack squared his shoulders, bracing for the inevitable clash with Tom. The palpable tension thickened the air, the weight of the crowd pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. Tom's skepticism churned in Jack's mind, mirroring his own doubts. They fought for dominance as he searched for the right words. "Tom," he began, his voice steady, yet tinged with uncertainty, "I'm not suggesting we jump blindly into danger. What I am proposing is that we acknowledge our fears and failures together. It is in this recognition that we nurture resilience." His heartbeat echoed, punctuating the silence that enveloped them. He could sense the audience's collective curiosity weighing on his shoulders like an immovable boulder. Would they back him or side with Tom? Tom stepped forward slightly, eyes narrowed. "You think this will embolden us? Vulnerability only invites exploitation. If you're not careful, we'll be left open to those who wish to take advantage of our honesty. It's a gamble, and you're wagering our livelihoods." Jack's gut tightened as Tom's words hung in the air, laden with potential truth. He could almost see the silent murmurs ripple through the crowd. Was he being reckless? He swallowed hard, his mind racing. He couldn't allow Tom's negativity to derail this pivotal moment. Jack took a breath, tuning out the sound of doubt and centering himself on his core belief. Authentic growth found its roots in discomfort. "What if," he countered carefully, "the greatest risk is in staying silent? If we suppress our vulnerabilities, we remain stagnant, trapped by conventions that no longer serve us. Every success story here has a foundation built on overcoming failure." He glanced at the older woman who had stepped forward earlier, her expression encouraging. Jack seized the moment, seeking connection. "Isn't it true that your loss taught you invaluable lessons? That those experiences molded you into the farmer you are today?" Nods erupted throughout the crowd, a ripple of understanding washing over them. Jack felt a flicker of hope at night. Perhaps Tom's skepticism wasn't insurmountable after all. They could create an environment that resonated beyond fear. And you, all of you, he pressed on, every one of us carries hidden traumas and stories worthy of sharing. When we let these bare, we force the industry to reevaluate what it measures as success. We redefine it on our own terms. He locked eyes with Tom, willing confidence into his voice. We must face this fire, because it's when we stand together, ignited by truth, that we can defend ourselves against it. Tom's face morphed from skepticism to contemplation, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. Jack could see the wheels turning in Tom's mind, but the momentary shift didn't last long. "You're naive, Jack," Tom finally replied, voice cooler than before. "This isn't just about vulnerability. It's about survival. The risks involved could unravel everything we've built." Jack's heart dropped. Was he building something doomed to collapse? Strong emotion surged as he fought against the realization. He knew he had to dig deeper, and the stakes were rising with every moment. "We can choose to be more than survivors, Tom. Isn't that worth the risk?" A charged silence enveloped them as Jack's plea hung in the air. The crowd remained watchful, eyes darting between Jack and Tom, weighing the growing friction between them like a teetering scale. "Jack," Dan interjected softly, a steady anchor amidst the brewing storm. "What's our end goal here? What do we want to achieve with this vulnerability?" In that instant, Jack felt clarity break through the fog of uncertainty. He could articulate their vision. A shared vision. We forge a new path where our stories fuel innovation and solidarity. Together, we become a community built on trust. Jack felt the pressure lift slightly as anticipation began to spark curiosity within the crowd. He was no longer just a voice. They were beginning to see him as a steward of change, and he embraced that role, wrapping it around him like armor. Yet the moment of clarity was punctuated by the sobering thought that Tom's doubts might still take root. Even as some began nodding in affirmation, Jack saw a flicker of discontent in others' eyes. What if Tom's warnings were not just idle threats, but the voices of caution woven within their deeply entrenched fears? Jack couldn't ignore that possibility. He wasn't merely confronting Tom's accusations. He was battling the deeply ingrained skepticism within himself that mirrored Tom's. Each heartbeat thudded louder, mingling with a rising tide of anxiety. Was he truly prepared to navigate these turbulent waters? As murmurs of intrigue surged among the crowd, Jack felt that familiar pang of fear stalk him yet again. It lingered at the edges, whispering insidiously of doubt. Was his resolve strong enough to withstand the scrutiny? Surrounded by shifting attitudes, Jack took a calculated breath. "It's not just about pushing back against doubt," he declared, now louder, confidence blooming amidst uncertainty. "It's about learning from it, understanding the consequences, and transforming them into our strengths." His eyes locked with Tom's, a fierce determination lighting within. "If we can confront our weaknesses, we will redefine this industry. Together, let's step into that unknown with courage, because only then we can come out transformed on the other side." And yet, even as the murmurs grew in support, a new, undeniable tension lingered. Tom's shadow was far from diminished. It was growing, threatening to engulf his emerging vision. Jack felt a defining moment bearing down on him, realizing he stood not only on the brink of a breakthrough, but also at the precipice of potential collapse. Would his journey into vulnerability lead toward transformation, or would it result in catastrophe? The crowd, now on the edge of deliberation, awaited his next move, unaware of the unseen forces still in play. Was Jack ready to take that leap? Jack struggled to maintain eye contact with Tom, the intensity of the moment curling tightly in his gut. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, a reminder that silence held its own power. He sensed the crowd's anticipation weighing heavier, their breaths bated as they waited for him to chart the course ahead. The fire he had ignited was still flickering, but it could easily die if he didn't fan it properly. "Tom," Jack began, his voice firm, yet tempered with the gravity of their discussion. "I understand you're concerned about the risks. We all are. But I genuinely believe that without confronting what holds us back, we will never progress beyond mere survival. It's time for a reckoning." A ripple of acknowledgement pulsed through the crowd, but he noted the shadows still lingering in some eyes. Jack glanced toward Dan, who offered an encouraging nod, further fueling his resolve. It was now or never. He needed to flip the script to become the embodiment of everything he preached. "Let me ask you," he continued, pacing slightly to loosen the tension in his shoulders, "how many of us have faced genuine rejection, loss, or failure?" He allowed the question to hang in the air as hands gradually rose, several faces twisting in stories only they knew. Each revelation sparked a spark of shared experience. Jack plunged deeper into his conviction. Those moments are not our weaknesses. They are the fertile ground for resilience. Each of you knows the challenges we face, and instead of isolating us, they can unite us. When we share our authentic stories, we peel away layers of fear and judgment. The murmurs rose again, capturing both sides of the room. Tom's posture stiffened, but Jack pressed on, his throat tightening with the fervor of belief. Think about it. What if your experience with crop failure doesn't just represent loss, but also the seeds for innovation? It's not about succumbing to despair. It's about learning what grows beneath regret. For a moment, Jack felt a shift, a renewed potential swelling in the crowd. He could feel a subtle shift in both the light and the atmosphere, the birth of a new narrative, one crafted not in silence, but in shared struggles. Yet, just as he glimpsed a path forward, Tom surged again, his tone sharp enough to slice through the air. "But what about the risk of making ourselves vulnerable? What if these stories become tools for exploitation? Are you willing to stake your livelihood on hope?" Jack flinched at the thought, but swiftly rallied. "It's a risk. Of course it is. But isn't vulnerability the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship, be it personal or professional?" He turned to the crowd, seeking to draw them into the gravity of his argument. "Think about the leaders we admire. Were they not shaped by their failures? I refuse to let fear dictate our choices. We deserve to tell our truths, even if we shudder at the vulnerabilities attached." In that moment, he leaned forward, eyes intense. "What we have here is a chance to redefine success. Together, we can cultivate an environment ripe for growth and innovation. Let's turn our shared stories into a reservoir of power and not let them drown us in doubt." The tide of energy shifted palpably, a palpable wave of encouragement washing over Jack as heads nodded vigorously. He seized the moment, pouring every ounce of sincerity into his words. Empowerment comes from understanding where we stand and facing it together. It's the only way to break the cycle of despair. Then something unexpected flickered in Jack's mind, a memory of the old woman from earlier. Just like a plant which doesn't yield its fruits until it has faced the storm, we too must brave the elements. It may feel daunting, but believe me when I say that on the other side of this discomfort lies transformation. As murmurs turned into affirmations, Jack felt a rush of adrenaline. Yet, in the back of his mind, the specter of Tom loomed larger, the remnants of doubt flickering like a candle's final breath. Was the ground solid beneath him, or too loose to support his vision? Jack realized that while he was igniting flames of solidarity, he was also stoking the fear within himself. The clarity he'd found was intoxicating, but volatile, and the specter of failure still loomed ominously. A sudden bolt of determination surged through him. He was ready to face this, but at what cost? Jack inhaled deeply, sensing that a pivotal moment had arrived. There was still so much left unresolved between him and Tom, and he had to confront the fears he had unearthed within so many others. Would he find the strength to confront Tom head-on, or allow the overwhelming tide of doubt to drown his newfound conviction? As the room descended into an excited hum, the stakes ratcheted higher. The reckoning was not over. It was just beginning. Jack stood at the front of the room, energy pulsating through the crowd. Glances exchanged, whispers merged into a soft undercurrent of hope, yet the tension remained palpable. He felt the impact of Tom's words swirling in the air like a fog that clung to everything. Was this the challenge he needed, or just another layer of anxiety trying to bury him beneath fear? With every heartbeat, Jack wrestled with the lingering doubts inside. Questions of adequacy and the solidity of his belief were like a persistent hammer against glass, threatening to shatter his resolve. He clenched his fists, grounding himself as he scanned the audience. They were looking for guidance, and he had to provide it, not just for them, but for himself. Tom is right, though, Jack thought. There's risk in laying ourselves bare. It dawned on him that if he bought into the idea of vulnerability as a double-edged sword, he might simultaneously empower and endanger not just himself, but everyone gathered. The complexity of that realization propelled him into action. He had to take charge of the narrative, shifting from introspection to authority. "Let's not shy away from the risks," Jack proposed, his voice gaining steadiness. "Instead, let's dissect them." He started pacing again, embracing the movement as a physical representation of his thoughts. What if every story shared protects us, fortifies our resolve against exploitation? Isn't fear a collective experience? A ripple of interest darted through the crowd. Jack could sense it, a door opening to exploration. In his mind, a metaphor emerged. They were not just individual seeds scattered across the soil. They were intertwining roots beneath a single surface, drawing nourishment from each other's stories to thrive. "Each of you has a unique perspective shaped by struggle," he continued, invigorated by the connection he felt growing among them. "When we extend our hands to each other, we are not just sharing burdens, we are creating a network of resilience." He paused, letting the words layer in the silence, compelling the crowd to digest their meaning. Yet, in this moment of newfound clarity, the personification of his doubt stood rigid across the room. Tom, arms crossed, defiance etched on his face. Jack's stomach churned with both apprehension and anticipation. This was the confrontation he hadn't realized he needed. It was time to draw from the depths of his understanding. "Tom, I hear your concerns, and they matter," Jack said, turning his focus. "But to achieve what we desire, a willingness to embrace risk must coalesce with courage to innovate. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a conduit to efficiency. Our past mistakes can illuminate the way for future successes if we're willing to face them as one." Tom's brow furrowed further, showing a flicker of contemplation amid skepticism. Jack's heart raced. He was tilting the scales, but would it be enough to shift the balance entirely? It was one thing to make a declaration. It was another to stand firm when it faced resistance. Jack summoned the last reserves of his determination. "Let's take this journey together. Find strengths where you thought there were weaknesses. Share your stories to show that failure doesn't define us, it refines us. What will you, the farmers and fighters, build together from our collective resilience?" A wave of murmurs cascaded across the room as people began leaning in, excitement mingling with trembling anticipation. They could feel the walls beginning to crack under the weight of shared vulnerability. Jack had ignited a fire, one he hoped would not just flicker, but blaze forth with undeniable clarity. Yet, in that urgent moment, he also felt the chill of insecurity wash over him. Was this truly the right approach? Was he asking too much? The buzzing exchanged current shifted the atmosphere, but so did Jack's internal conflict. There was still much to reconcile within himself. Doubt hung like a shadow at the edges, gnawing at the foundation he was attempting to build. The burning question remained as Tom fixed his gaze on Jack. Did the vulnerability he advocated for lead to enlightenment or chaos? And as Jack stood in this fragile moment of possibility, the reality struck him. This was more than just a discussion. It was the culmination of an evolving conviction. Would he brace himself against the storm that was Tom's rebuttal, or would he crumble under the pressure he had invited? Jack inhaled deeply, sensing that his confrontation wasn't just a necessity, but an inevitable step toward personal growth, a moment ripe with impending transformation. The reckoning was still unfolding, an electric charge woven into the fabric of that room, both a challenge and an opportunity unspooling before him. The subsequent moments felt stretched like an eternity as Tom set his stance, arms crossed, the air thick with palpable tension. Jack's heart pounded, urging him to navigate this confrontation like a tightrope walker balancing fear and hope. "Why would you invite chaos?" Tom's voice clipped the air, skepticism etched deep in his features. "You're banking on vulnerability as a source of strength, but what happens when this backfires?" Jack met Tom's eyes, steeling himself against the fear that his words might falter. "Tom," he began, taking a breath to center himself. "You're right, there is risk involved, but there's also the potential for connection, for breakthroughs." Each word felt like an ember igniting within him. Why should we remain shackled by a fear of failure when we can challenge it together? From the back of the room, a familiar face emerged. Mr. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who had sparked hope in him years before. Jack's heart surged, realizing he was no longer alone in this fight. "Every endeavor we undertake, Tom," Mr. Thompson chimed in, his calm demeanor radiating reassurance. "It's in the open exchange of failures that we cultivate a culture of resilience. Look at history. It's rich with stories of overcomers." Jack felt a wave of support from the gathering, a community united behind the potential for transformation. "Tom," he insisted, voice resolute, "we can reshape expectations. Vulnerability isn't just about revealing weaknesses. It's about fortifying one another." Yet Tom remained steadfast. "And if weakness is all they see, what will they think of the industry? What impact will this have on our livelihoods?" Jack could feel the challenge thrumming through him, but pain had sharpened him over the years. "Then let them see. Let's show them that we are not defined. We are defined by our resilience, by our willingness to rise every time we fall." The words resonated in the room, igniting another flicker of connection. Hands shifted uncomfortably, but glances traded hints of intrigue. Jack could feel the tide turning ever so slightly, their collective curiosity igniting embers of transformation. "Maybe it's time for that conversation, Tom," he pressed on, determination intertwining with urgency. "It's about acknowledging the storms we face together and turning them into lessons." An unexpected silence followed, almost reverent. Jack's own voice became the source of clarity, cascading reassurance that they were not simply fighting their own battles. They could stand together against the tide. Taking a step closer, he leveled his gaze at Tom. "We all have scars, Tom. Mine are visible. Yours might hide beneath the surface. But together, we can open the floor, reclaim our stories. Together, we transform." While the crowd buzzed with contemplative energy, he suddenly sensed the weight of leadership settling onto his shoulders, a mantle he had long tried to evade. Confronting Tom meant confronting himself as well. "And if we falter, then we support one another. We learn, we grow," Jack asserted, standing tall, the embers of determination morphing into flames of ambition. "That's the legacy worth building." The atmosphere shifted profoundly. Some nods deepened, while a core group began murmuring thoughts in agreement. Even the skeptics seemed to soften, contemplating the gravity of being seen within a culture of resilience. "Let's cultivate a new environment," Jack proposed, energized by the growing momentum. "One where we embrace discomfort, where vulnerability becomes our collective strength rather than liability." Mr. Thompson stepped up beside Jack, eyes filled with pride. Our industry needs this now more than ever. Jack's heart swelled at the visible shift occurring within the crowd. Just like that, the space transformed from a battleground into a sanctuary of possibilities. Crucially, he turned back to Tom, who finally seemed to soften. Jack's voice softened too, recognizing the humanity beneath the rivalry. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about redefining success with everyone in it, and you, Tom, are a vital part of this. Imagine where we could go if we transformed this struggle into something profound, together. For a beat, the room lingered in stillness. Jack took the collective breath that followed, eyes locked onto Tom with unwavering resolve. And then the silence broke. Tom held Jack's gaze, a flicker of understanding illuminating the shadow of doubt. In that instant, he recognized he wasn't just confronting Tom, he was paving the way for solidarity. All right, let's give it a try, Tom relented finally, the tension between them thawing into a conciliatory possibility. But don't expect it to be easy. Jack felt the thunderous applause in his veins. Relief surged through him. This was a victory forged not just in words, but in courage. Later, as conversations erupted throughout the room, Jack felt a profound connection solidifying. People began sharing their own stories, crowding around him. Eyes bright with revelation, each story served not merely as a testimony of hardship, but as a rallying cry for community, a promise of shared ambition. In that atmosphere, Jack finally understood. His identity, entwined with an empowered community, had eclipsed his past. The layers of his journey had become a place of belonging, not as a frail reminder of loss, but as a foundation for emergence, fortified by collective resolve. When he later wheeled away from the crowd, steeped in validation, Jack recognized the whispering remnants of his earlier despair. They had transformed into roars, not only for himself, but for the entire industry, a palpable call for progress. He had not only stepped onto the stage, he had commanded it. Each passing moment solidified the triumph over his fears. What now lay ahead was a future where he and his fellow farmers no longer operated in isolation, but united, forging pathways toward strength, resilience, and a new definition of success. In that definitive shift, Jack discovered not just his achievements, but a newfound responsibility, the power to uplift others as they navigated their own storms. Here at last was the promise of a brighter tomorrow waiting eagerly beyond the horizon. With renewed determination, Jack turned back to the gathering, becoming more than just a man rediscovering the land he loved. He had become a catalyst for transformation, and as the realization washed over him, he couldn't help but smile, confident that he had finally reclaimed his voice. Now we need you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss these exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the message of resilience far and wide. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Your voice matters. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of transformation. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel that brings you these profound narratives of personal overcoming. Now, we need you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss these exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the message of resilience far and wide. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Your voice matters. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of transformation. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel that brings you these profound narratives of personal overcoming.